On my way to the studio this morning, I was listening to the radio, and then Burna Boy's song came on, the one with Don Jazzy, where he said, now by the grace of God and inshallah, now we dey move. So it hit me for the first time that there is no other sector in this country where this statement has been more pertinent than the health sector. Let's cast our mind back to the Ebola virus, and then more recently, 2020, the coronavirus pandemic, where we just, folded our hands in Africa and in Nigeria, waiting for the West, waiting for the Asians to come to our aid. For the first time, Nigerians were able to see what we mean by the fact that we are entirely dependent on the West. And so we waited, and thankfully, in COVAX we trust, we got our first free batches of vaccine. Now, conversations are going on, researches are going on, we're talking about the cure for the coronavirus. And as usual, Nigeria is missing in this conversation. So what is the problem? Why can't we manufacture our drugs? Today on the show, we have a drug development and quality assurance expert, Dr. Abubakar Danraka. He's going to try to explain to us why Nigeria can't seem to manufacture her own drugs. My name is Ekwe Onyekwele. This is the White Coat Report. Thank you for joining the conversation. Welcome, Dr. Danraka. As a pharmacist, as a drug development expert, seeing that we cannot participate in conversations about drug production on the world level and on the world stage.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel uneasy because the drug development issue is actually a capital intensive issue, and as you know, we are adequately classified as low and medium income country because of our opportunities, the capital intensive nature of how you need to invest to be able to compete in the global pharma industry. So it further tells you that we are truly a developing country because our infrastructure deficits are very clear. You can't have a sophisticated production line or production capability at this level of indices of development we are. We don't have 24-hour light. We don't have infrastructure for adequate staff personnel metrics to run all those biotechnology capable sophisticated machinery to produce products that are highly precise, as the precision medicine I'm talking about. So these are our realities.
And we also have to import those machines. Yes,
because we don't have the capability to produce the necessary tools for those machinery to produce those machines.
Whenever I speak with pharmacists and I ask why can't we manufacture our own drugs, I always get 3 letters. APIs, active pharmaceutical ingredients.
Yes.
So for the sake of our audience, maybe you can break it down so they can understand what we mean by that.
In drug manufacturing, we have 3 levels of production in any setting, either in the low-income, medium country or in the advanced countries. Basically, the primary production level speaks to those biological compounds that you need to produce and the raw materials in making the medicines. I think before then I need to mention that there is a difference between drug and medicines. What you see when you purchase any medication is the medicine, which is, for instance, any paracetamol tablet you see, the syrup and the injectable. So the drug is embedded inside the medicine. You have other things that make it for you to be able to carry it and administer it to yourself. Then it makes it palatable, sweet, or whatever. So the medicine you are carrying has the drug component, which is the active pharmaceutical ingredient, and the excipients, those components that make it to deliver it to the target site. That is, when you swallow the tablet, when you see a tablet of paracetamol, it's written 500 milligram paracetamol. Yes, but when you weigh it, it's far above 500, because what that communication is saying is that the active pharmaceutical ingredient in this tablet is paracetamol 500 milligram. The other extra weight are what we call the starch and the cellulose that you use as the binders, the disintegrants, so that when you swallow the tablet, it enters into your GIT, that's gastrointestinal tract, it is dissolved and the paracetamol is released at where it is needed. So the primary production level, which is the first level of production, is where you need to be producing these active pharmaceutical ingredients and the excipients, which are the raw materials in producing the medicines. The synthesis, the development process starts from different. You can get it from chemicals and you can get it from herbs. That's a different thing entirely. That's the development process of the drug. Then the second line of production is the secondary production level. That secondary production level is where you have the pharmaceutical companies that procure the active pharmaceutical ingredients and the excipients to process and formulate them into the dosage form of interest. And unfortunately, that's where we are in this country. We have more of secondary production facilities in Nigeria where they procure the active pharmaceutical ingredients. They also procure the excipients with the machinery which are imported. Then you now put the items together to produce the medication. Okay. Then the last level of production is the tertiary production level, where you have the supporting industries. That is all those packaging materials, the machinery to produce the APIs are also produced. So the primary and tertiary need to come together to have the secondary. But unfortunately, because of a lot of factors which we might come to later, in this country and this part of the world, unfortunately, we are the leading pharma country in West Africa, but we are talking about ourselves. We are still not where we are supposed to be. Why am I saying that? Because Nigeria in West Africa is the largest producer of locally production of medicines. We have over 160 pharmaceutical companies in Nigeria. The second to us in West Africa is Ghana, which has about 30. So you can see the leap and the gap because of our population and so on. But surprisingly, it's only Ghana that has a pharmaceutical company that produces active pharmaceutical ingredients at the primary level. But as we are in this country, we don't have any any company that is producing API.
And then why is that?
As I said, I alluded to, it's very capital intensive. It's very
so
capital intensive. So funding is very important because you cannot establish a primary production facility without huge infrastructure. Infrastructure in the sense of the machinery you need for producing, that is the synthesis. As I mentioned, I said you get the API through chemical processes. You actually synthesize. Surprisingly, as God will have it, we have a lot of petrochemicals from our abundant oil sector, because the major precursor to most of the synthetic medicines is our petrochemical. This, the byproduct of the refining of oil, you have the petrochemicals, you have the...
Can I cut in there?
Okay.
Since we don't refine most of our oil in Nigeria, does it mean that we leave the APIs, the basis for APIs outside the country?
Technically, that's what it means. But even at that, the minimal refining we are doing, because we are not at zero level refining, we have some minimal refining where we have the paraben oil and so on are got from all those petrochemical precursors. Yeah. Okay. So it is funding. Why it is funding? Because if an investor does not have a guarantee for his return of investment, he won't invest. You know the index of foreign direct investment.
Yeah?
Yes, there is the market. Yes,
so there is. Money back should be guaranteed.
It's not as simple as that. Okay. The pharmaceutical ecosystem is very complex in the sense that the policies that need to be in place to support and guarantee return of investment are lacking. Let me give you an instance which might surprise you. For you to import a finished pharmaceutical product, you have zero.
Okay,
Zero
taxation
tax.
policy.
Yes, it's zero. You don't have any tax to pay for importing a finished pharmaceutical product. But the contracts is when you are importing the machinery and the excipients and the APIs, you pay up to 15 to 20% of tax duty. So what that does is that it's easier for you to make more money when you import the medications than when you produce locally. I think to carry the conversation home is to give you a typical scenario.
I think,
okay.
I understand what you're saying there, but then this now brings it to a policy issue. Are you saying that we have a Nigerians drafted that policy, knowing that we need to encourage indigenous production? So maybe this is where the pharmaceutical companies need to now lobby to have a change in that policy.
I think to speak directly to that is we need to have a background. Where we are coming from, because you won't understand the complexity of the ecosystem if you don't know where we are coming from. And where are we coming from? With the local production of pharmaceuticals started pre-1957. We call that era pre-1957. That is, before 1957, the first community pharmacy that was established in Nigeria was in 1887 by one Mr. Richard Zacchaeus Bailey.
Lagos.
He's a Nigerian in Lagos, specifically Balogun Street. That was where the first community pharmacy started. Then it was from that community pharmacy with introduction of finished product by Europeans. It was multinationals that were providing pharmaceuticals into the Nigerian market. Then in that 1957, the second era is 1957 to 1980. That era is when we have establishment of pharmaceutical plants by multinationals. Big multinationals that were available then established pharmaceutical farms to start producing what they were importing. So from 1980 to 82, which is the second era, is the era where we had the indigenization policy. What was the indigenization policy? The government of the day around that period insisted that all multinational corporations must indigenize. 40-60 ratio. 40% owned by multinationals and 60 owned by Nigerians. And it was in that era we had our first indigenous pharmaceutical company, the biomedical in Ilorin, Kwara, in 1980. So why am I giving this background? So that you will understand where we are coming from. This third phase of the production history of pharmaceuticals in Nigeria was between 1982 to 1986, where we call it the era that we had liberalization of import licensing. That policy of allowing everybody to import medications, which up to now we are suffering from, we have not recovered from it. Because people that took pharmaceutical importation as a money-making thing just invested and started importing medicines. So even after 1999, the establishment of NAFDAC and the improvement of Pharmaceutical Council of Nigeria to regulate production of medicines, we are still trying to recover from that impact of a businessman that has seen how to make money. To take it away from him is difficult, even if you want to use national interest for self-sufficiency. So the current era we are is post-1999, where we are improving. Late Professor Dora Akimile of blessed memory did a lot of effort in that to be able to reduce the prevalence of fake medications in Nigeria. In 2001, it was as high as 70% prevalence. Before she left NAFDAC in 2014, it dropped to 16.7%. And unfortunately, up to now, no survey has been done. But what I am trying to say is that we are on incremental progress, but we have not reached where we are. Currently, we have pharmaceutical companies that are trying to come together to bring a change in having indigenous companies that are strong enough to compete with their counterpart globally. Because we have...
I thought we were talking about the taxation policy.
The taxation policy is the one we are still... as pharmacists, we belong to Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria. Yes. One of our technical arm, the Association of Industrial Pharmacists of Nigeria, are advocating and pushing for government to understand the need to copy models that have worked across the world. You have different models. In Africa, you have the Ethiopian model, you have the Ghanaian model. The Ethiopian model is speaking to having industrial parks. That is because of the issue of the capital-intensive nature of pharma industry. Government decided to say, okay, can we have these industrial parks where government will give subvention of dedicated power and import
like
relief. Exactly,
public-private
public-private partnership. That's the Ethiopian model. The Ghanaian model is saying no to importation. No, you cannot import any finished pharmaceutical product. Ghanaian model is saying if you are a big farmer and you want to access the Ghanaian market, come and establish in Ghana and produce the medications. That's how they were able to get that pharma manufacturing company to produce the API. You understand? So, as a way of advocating forward, our NAIP, that's the Nigeria Association of Industrial Pharmacists, and the Pharmaceutical Manufacturers Group of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, PMGMAN, are putting heads together to make government understand that you have tried, for instance, the rice revolution policy, and you are seeing what you are getting. If you come to pharma industry and invest and copy models that have worked in other countries, we are better for it because we have comparative advantage. We are the largest market. We are also the largest country that has the largest number of pharma. So that is the appeal by those agencies.
Talking about WHO prequalification. I saw an article in 2014 that said out of the over 100 pharmaceutical companies we have in Nigeria, it was just 4 that qualified at that time. I think according to the then minister, Professor Chukwu, he said 11 companies actually enrolled in it, but only 4 succeeded. They were still positive that more were going to qualify. So I don't know if anything has happened since then.
If you know how much it takes to acquire the WHO pre-qualification, vis-a-vis that is putting it aside with the investment you do and the kind of markets that you are the prospective market you need, no sane pharmaceutical company will want to delve into.
$600 million.
That is what I'm trying to tell you. At least you understand, because this there are waivers actually. Yeah. There are some waivers, but even with the waivers, the minimum payment just to attain it. For instance, one of the key criteria for WHO pre-qualification is 24-hour light. We know how our public power supply is. For you to augment whatever you get from our public power, you are talking about diesel. What kind of volume of money, production for 1 week, in a month, in a year, what is the quantity of power you need to guarantee the 24-hour light? That's one aspect. The second aspect is the HVAC, the complete modified system of your production, where from the air that is inside the manufacturing plant to the humidity and the temperature is under a controlled environment, which is linked to the 24-hour light. Because if you don't have that HVAC system, which guarantees the air that enters into the facility, you cannot acquire the WHO pre-qualification. That's 2. The third one is the issue of the tracking system. How do you enforce the tracking system in your country? It might interest you to know that issue of numbering. If something enters this country, to trace it from point A to point B until it gets out of the country, do we have the standardized numbering system in the country? That is from the street numbering to the houses to the location. Do we have it? In all truthfulness to ourselves, I think we are not there. So these issues are what makes the WHO pre-qualification to be a big challenge, and one of the criteria as advocated by the global pharma is if you don't have WHO pre-qualification, you cannot bid for the large-scale production of all those free medications. Because those companies that survive
Medications
for TB, malaria, HIV, and other diseases of interest that are funded. You mentioned COVAX. You see, there are global initiatives by the developed countries to give, like corporate social responsibility, to put aside huge sum of money in hundreds of millions of dollars to support some public health concerns. But it's like robbing Peter to pay Paul. All these things are coming from the access they have to Africa, and the returns they make is to say they will invest in companies that have attained social qualifications, and no African countries attain such. Unfortunately, in West Africa, we have to focus on our region.
So instead of saying invest in pharmaceuticals that have attained a certain level, wouldn't it be better to say let's help you attain that level? Or not waiting for you to attain it before we invest money into it?
That is the narrative we are introducing. That instead of always saying you are only investing in companies that have attained the qualification, we have advocated, which they are listening, to invest in health and pharmaceutical system strengthening to boost our qualification, and that is what is going on. So we are looking at, in the next 2 to 3 years, we will have attained a large number of our pharmaceutical companies with the support of those kind of fundings to attain the qualification. But sustainability is another issue. If they make you attain it, are you sustainable? What derails the sustainability is government patronage. You know, this administration, we have to say kudos to them for introducing the Executive Order 3, which mentions all MDAs should dedicate 40% of their procurement to local manufacturing. So that kind of guaranteed patronage can make an investor to look for money and attain self-sufficiency in making drugs and other commodities available.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the pandemic, because when it started and it was flights were banned, movements were banned, and all animals were equal, so to say, we were very optimistic that this would wake up our leaders' awareness, the political office holders, their awareness to actually developing Nigeria's health sector. And then that even also boils down to drug manufacturing, vaccine production, and all that. So would you say that actually, or let me say those, the politicians and the office holders, at the beginning there was this clamor for, oh, let's do this, let's do that. But after they saw that the severity wasn't as bad as we're expecting it to be, I think it's been calm on the government front, because I was thinking that with the pandemic, there will be this renewed interest to start funding all the necessary sectors in the health system, drugs, vaccine production.
Yes.
So would you say Nigeria has learned her lesson, or are we waiting for a bigger pandemic to hit?
In all honesty, I must say the government has tried. We have truly learned a lesson, because for the first time in recent history, in more than 2 decades, that dedicated funding for pharma was announced. The CBN set aside 50 billion naira for pharmaceutical research, and made a call for people and agencies that have concepts and proposals to make interventions, which I'm aware a lot of researchers and pharmaceutical scientists, pharmacists have made their submission. But the only thing, the snag, is that the release of those funding, from the time they announced till now, I don't think they have released up to 10%. The bureaucracy and the review has set in. Then another way that I will say government has also learned is the kind of funding that was released for COVID-19 interventions. The federal government, through the Federal Ministry of Health and Budget and National Finance, Budget and National Planning, actually set aside dedicated funding to improve our healthcare delivery system in terms of the kind of facilities. You could see that before the pandemic, how many laboratories, molecular laboratories, do we have to even test a viral infection? But because of the pandemic, from a meager 3 or 5 centers in the country, we now have over 35 centers that are doing that kind of diagnosis. And also in the funding for R&D, R&D is research and development institutions have got increased funding for dedicated activity. It will have been, you know, you cannot, there is a proverb that you cannot just, the day you want to travel, you want to, in Hausa they say, it's not the day you want to travel, you want to drain your, the gorge, that you need to drink water. If not, if it is that day, it will be a bitter water. So investment in R&D is not something you do now, it's continuous. It's after a period of time you will start seeing the results. So you might not see the impact immediately, but if it is sustained with the lessons we have learned from the pandemic, definitely we will see the in 3 to 5 years. That's in the short run.
Not just as usual documents or decrees.
No.
And then dumped to one side.
No.
Actively, this is ongoing.
The only advocacy as a drug development expert is if this funding that we have seen in 2020 to 2021 is sustained, then that's where my hypothesis stands, that in the next 3 to 5 years, you will see the clear change. But if after 2021 and we go back to where we were, then definitely the decay will not be removed.
All right. In your expert opinion now, when do you see Nigeria having indigenous pharmaceutical companies producing APIs at that primary level? When do you see it happening in Nigeria?
In all truthfulness and expert assessment, is something as soon as the government agrees with the policies, reviewing policies.
So it's a political will. It's a matter of political will.
It's a matter of political will. Previously, I mentioned the government, out of their own will, decided to do a rice revolution. To take rice to be on the front burner of export. If another government or this government decides to prioritize pharmaceuticals, that they want Nigerian pharmaceutical products to be taken out of the country for export, it will happen. I'm telling you, it will happen, because it takes only the right policies, and the good thing is that these things have been done. As I said, there is the Ethiopian model, there is also the Ghanaian model. It's just to copy and paste, and it's the political will. If the political will, I must tell you, in Ethiopia, what they did was they beat their chest to say their airline industry has reached their zenith. It's competing with any airline industry in the world. So they now moved to pharmaceuticals. They said they want to take pharmaceutical to the level they have taken their aviation industry. And that's what they are doing. And you can be rest assured, with the trajectory of policies they are putting in place and the investment they are doing, naturally in the next 3 to 5 years, they will be the hub of pharmaceutical production in Africa. So that was what happened in Rwanda. Rwanda too is another case note. Yes. The Rwandan policy of having big farmers, one of their models speaks to, we don't agree to having small industries. They brought the consolidation. You can recall the banking consolidation. You know, before we had many banks, but they can't compete globally. Then during the Charles Soludo era, the concept of consolidation of banks to have big banks came. It had its own disadvantages and advantages, but the key thing is that it's better you have the big pharma concept where government will incentivize smaller pharma companies to come together, merging to form big pharma. That's another model, so that you talk about pharmaceutical companies in Nigeria that are in the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars, not below that. You know, the size of our market was over $2 billion, but I can assure you with this dollar exchange problem, I'm sure it has crashed down to less than $1 billion, because you know, as the dollar rate increases, it's just like our salary,
yeah, the value,
the value of
what you could buy.
What you could buy then that's the same thing. Political will is the key word.
Okay. Thank you so much
For your time, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you as always. Thank you.